Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Kim Howerton is a certified metabolic health coach, teacher, speaker, and author. Her motivation to become a health coach was fueled by her own experience of ill health, which included polycystic ovarian condition, binge eating disorder, major depressive disorder, hypothyroidism, morbid obesity, which is now termed level 3 obesity, metabolic dysfunction, gastritis, IBS, and autoimmune disease. Sheesh, just that. As age 40 loomed, she knew that she needed to get serious about her health. And over the next several years, she devoted herself to getting educated about what it means to become and remain a healthy human. After transforming herself into a person in good health, she knew that nothing mattered more than sharing what she'd learned with others who felt similarly hopeless. She teaches her clients that relentless self-advocacy and self-improvement can turn the tide on the myriad health conditions that are plaguing society. She is the author of several books, including the co-author of her most recent book, Common Sense Labs, a practical guide to decoding your blood work and taking control of your health, written with our future guest, Dr. Ken Perry. Dr. Kim Berry, excuse me. Kim currently lives in Berkeley, California, and is having a lovely day. It sounds like lovely weather. Kim, welcome to the show. It's such an honor to host you.
Thanks so much, Casey. I'm really glad to be here.
It is really an honor to host you. I'm going to give you two compliments right off the bat. First is I've gotten to meet you at several different conferences and gotten to hang out with you and give you big hugs. I have to just say right off the bat, you are just as kind and sweet and wonderful in person as you make yourself out to be online, which I think is amazing. And this is, I want to be very scientific when I say this. This is objective. This is an opinion. This is scientific fact. You are the best dressed person at every conference I've ever seen you at, hands down. That is scientific and randomized controlled trial. Maybe Ben Azadi might have something to say about either one of those things. He might take a close second, but you by far
I'll take the female category.
All right. There you go. There you go. Fair enough. You get the overall as well, but yeah, always looking immaculate. I absolutely love it. And you're such a sweet person. So thank you so much for taking time to be on our show today. This has now happened to me twice where, we get pitched different guests all the time and people reach out and say, hey, will you host such and such? And it happened the first time a few years ago when somebody said, hey, would you like to host Dr. Georgia Eid on your show? And I was like smashing the keyboard like, yes, yes, yes. Are you kidding? I've been reaching out for years and years. And the second time happened when somebody reached out and said, hey, would you like to interview Kim and Dr. Berry? And I'm like, yes, come on, right now, let's do it. I know you're very, very busy and you've got a lot going on. You're always writing books, but it's been a long time coming. And I'm so glad that we have this opportunity to chat with you today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I appreciate it. I have to say, I have a bit of a split personality. I love clothes. I love them. And I also hate to be uncomfortable. So, it's always a bit of a push-pull between looking like a homeless person and looking like I know what I'm doing. So, I have to get it in at conferences when I can.
Well, let me tell you, for somebody that leans a lot more towards looking like a homeless person, you look amazing. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So, I really have always enjoyed running into you at conferences. You always are so friendly and welcoming. And so it's hard not to reciprocate the good vibes.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I think it is challenging to get so many people, supposedly in a ketogenic state together and not have just the most amazing, energetic time. Everybody's happy. You never see anybody nodding off at 2 p.m, 3 days into a conference. Like it's unlike any other, gathering of people that I've ever been around. It's just such amazing energy and we all feed off of it. So yeah, they're a lot of fun.
For sure, awesome. For sure. It's also nice because I think a lot of us in this field, we work alone, right? We're in our homes working. I mean, we Zoom, we have clients, but you don't really have coworkers. And there's no like hang out by the water cooler and have a conversation. And so the conferences are a super fun way to feel like you're part of a bigger thing.
Absolutely. We meet people from all around the world that we had never heard of, and they take stage and it's like, where has this person been? This person's amazing. Yeah. It was just that we don't get exposed to it as often as you think we might. So, yep, totally agree. Our purpose today, obviously, is to talk about your new book, which is coming out very, very soon, which is awesome. Can't wait for that. I actually got an advanced copy and I've been perusing it. And you guys did an amazing job with everything, all the information in there. Before we get to that, I do want to hear your story. I don't think we can, skip over all the 10 things we mentioned in your introduction you were dealing with. That's quite the hole you had to dig yourself out of.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I kind of have always been in ill health. I mean, that's kind of just like my story. It's sort of hard to not take it on as an identity at a certain point. I had my first surgery when I was 5. I had
Wow.
been born with like a mass on my lung, and so that I had that removed. So, then I had asthma, I had this, I had that. I was just always sick. And I think for a variety of reasons, I started compulsively eating, and I was a compulsive overeater in childhood. And so I used it to self-medicate. And so, it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? But like, I had some health problems, and I had some mental health problems, and I had some hormonal problems, and I ate a lot because it made me feel better while I was eating. And then I threw my hormones further out of whack by being obese. And then, so this is kind of like hamster wheel of problems. And for my whole life, I mean, I was a skinny infant, but that's about it. But by the time I was in the 3rd grade, I was definitely not of a healthy weight. And so but it was manageable. I don't know how else to put it. Like, I was overweight, but I could still walk. I could still fit in a chair. I could still, I could manage it. I was just the chubby kid. And this was a time when there were fewer chubby kids. I mean, it happened. It was more, but it's not quite as much as it is now.
Very different.
It was the 80s, so it wasn't out of the question, but it was not uncommon for me as a 9, 10, 11-year-old to get asked if I was pregnant, which is not great for the ego. And it was because I was like a big belly kid, and teen pregnancy was apparently more popular or more common than teen obesity, or, so, and I looked older than I was. I will say that. Like, I was tall. And so, when I was 9, I could have passed for 14. So like, I get like that sort of, anyway, but it was weird. And so I ended up just in a spiral of eating to cover the way I felt, feeling bad, and just kind of was this cycle. But I stayed sort of like overweight, class 1 or 2 obesity. Like I don't know how to categorize it. I was normal fat. I don't know how to say that. And then I got to my late 30s, and it just started to spiral. Like, I just couldn't control it at all. I felt it's like, I guess if you have any addiction, you're like, I'm handling it, I'm managing it, I can and then like, if an alcoholic, I still have a job. Like, you have all these excuses why it's still okay. And then I got to a point where I was like, oh no, I'm having like a breakdown every day. I was crying every day. Like, it was a mess. And I was like, well, this can't go on. I'm going to die. And that's when I finally sort of broke free of the cycle and started seeking help. So that was my late 30s. I found a low carb thing first. It took a few like this, that's, and the others before I finally found my way to keto. And then once I was keto, that was the start of my transformation in terms of really turning around my health, my weight, and all my conditions. Yeah.
That's amazing. It never fails to just like be so impressive that a ketogenic diet is amazing for weight loss. You can do really great with weight loss on a ketogenic diet, but it's a laundry list of other things that improve. When we're talking about, counting calories for weight control, and like, yes, calories may matter in some situations, but we're not just talking about weight control. Like, that's great, and we can do that. But like, pushing towards, carnivore for some people, it's, the carnivore version, the ketogenic version, whatever it is, but going in that direction, it's not only the weight loss, it's all the other things that come with it. Those are really heavy conditions that you're talking about,
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, along the way, I also like discovered that I had undiagnosed hypothyroidism. Like, it's not just, but it's like, sometimes when everything just feels super broken, you can't even find a thread to start to pull on to fix other health problems. Like, the foundation is so damaged. And so and that's part of the reason this book was really important to me, because just losing the weight wasn't enough. It's about like, I'll just say, when I first went keto, it was all about losing the weight. I'm not going to lie. I didn't think any of the other things would get fixed. But as I started to function better, feel better, I was like, oh, I think I can actually address these other health problems too.
Yeah. I guess that's what I mean is most people think they're getting into the diet for the weight loss, and they soon realize that's not even like really the primary motivator anymore. That's like the background thing. Right. I've often said like you go to some of these conferences and it's almost a little weird that we don't talk as much about weight loss that we do. Like it's there for sure, but it's not usually like a main topic. We're talking about like all kinds of other things that the diet is fixing. So yeah, that's amazing. And how long ago was that you found the ketogenic diet and kind of started to push that direction?
9 years. Okay. 9 years. So 9 years ago, I think 9-ish years, I found keto. I'm trying to remember. It is 9. It's 9. I'm like, how old am I? 9. And I then did keto. And so like, I have kind of like, we could be here a long time, so I don't want to, I'll just cut me off. I can talk. I started keto, did keto. Keto was amazing, felt so much better. My depression was much better. I felt just like a different human in a lot of ways. But I lost a lot of weight really fast. And then I stopped losing weight and I was still doing the same thing I'd always done. And so I had to like dive a lot deeper into all of the things that help me manage my weight.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Kind of tying this into our topic, when we're talking about you personally and your journey, how important were different lab markers, blood markers, whatever that you write about now? How important were they to you and your information and understanding your health, not only like during your weight loss journey, but even like before your weight loss journey? Was it important for you to know different lab markers and that kind of thing, even through your ketogenic journey? Was that something that you paid attention to?
Well, I will be honest to say, like, I didn't really know much about health before I started my journey. Like, I knew stuff, but like, I was not in the doctor's office all the time. I was managing symptoms when I went to the doctor. I wasn't like, let's get to the bottom of this, because I didn't think any of them were fixable. I was like, oh, PCOS, you have PCOS, you just have it. So I had it since I was 15 years. I found out I had it when I was 15. Nobody said anything about changing it. And, and so hypothyroidism was the first one where I was like, oh, I can actually manage this somehow. And that with supplemental hormones, right? With thyroid hormone. And, I didn't know much about labs before I started my keto journey. And I think maybe it was my relationship with Dave Feldman. I'm trying to figure out like what the start of it was, but Dave, everybody knows Dave, but Dave is very into cholesterol markers, right? And he was getting constant blood tests. And back at the start of my journey, I was at the first Keto Fest where Dave was in Connecticut. And at the very first Keto Fest in Connecticut, Dave ran a experiment. We all like did an experiment together. And so we all got blood work done as a group to see like how we could impact our LDL levels based on what we had eaten over the weekend. So we all kind of did that experiment. And I haven't thought of this until now, but maybe that was part of the spark of me being like, wait, we should be able to track some of these things. And, people were talking about insulin and C-peptide and, all these other markers that are important for metabolic health. And so that's when I just started to geek out on the topic.
Wow. That meeting is like keto lore or something. It's like in the history of keto, that one meeting was like so pivotal for Dave to actually, get out there. I didn't know he was doing testing on everybody and not just himself, but yeah, that meeting is in the legend of keto.
Yeah, it was not a huge group, but he'd only ever previously tested on himself and family members at that point. And so I think he wanted to see, well, will this same pattern of if you eat a lot versus if you're fasting, will your markers go up or down? He wanted to see if that was true on a wider group of people.
Got it. Okay, awesome. Okay, so taking it up to today, there are people in our space who say blood markers really don't matter. Like, Dr. Sean Baker is one that will say, like, if you feel good today, that is your best indication of health tomorrow. We don't know exactly what these numbers mean. They have different contexts for different people on different diets. The reference ranges are totally different. As you guys write about, like there's the normal range and the optimal range, and those are two completely different things. And then there's other people that say, no, labs really are important. You need to get them all the time. I am sat firmly on the fence on this one. I can see both sides. And I like both, but what would you say to that? Like, how would you answer somebody who said, like, I don't know that blood labs are really all that important?
Okay. I would say I am a firm believer that you should never do anything that feels like something you don't want to do. Like, if you're, I don't like to do my taxes, but there are certain things you have to do. But, like if you hate eating a certain way, even though eating that way is better for you, you eat however you want. It's your choice, your body, you do you, right? Even if I think there's something better you could be doing. So I would never tell anyone what they have to do. However, I think that there are really good reasons to monitor your labs. And I don't disagree on a certain level with what Sean says, that if you feel good, that's one of your very best indicators that things are going well for you. But a lot of people don't feel well, right? And so if you just don't feel well and you don't quite know why you don't feel well, then how are you going to find out if you don't start doing some research? And so that's one thing. And, I know for me, changing my diet was the most powerful thing I ever did in my whole life to better my health. However, I still had some health problems. Losing weight, going keto, however you want to look at it, didn't fix my thyroid. Still had hypothyroidism. I still to this day have hypothyroidism. So, that's something where I wouldn't know how to manage that condition if I didn't do labs. I'm almost 49, right? My hormones are like, they're just freaking out right now. And I did some labs and they made me feel so much better, because I spent about 2 years thinking, I think it's perimenopause, but I might just be insane, right? Not quite sure, because really perimenopause is like the ultimate gaslighter. Like all of any symptom, you're like, is it perimenopause or am I just a bitch? I don't know, right? And so so I had to look at that. So I think labs can be very helpful, because I am a person that thrives on knowledge. I thrive on information, data. But there's one thing we say in the book, which is, or there's a couple things, but one of them is like, you have to get to know what's normal for you. These are averages. These are normal ranges. These are ranges we think are optimal. However, if you feel great, everything else seems to line up, but this one marker is weirdly in this other range, that might just be your normal. And so having a history of blood work can help you, so that if you know what your blood work looks like when you feel good, and then you get blood work done later and it's different, well, that's like a little bit of a red flag. That's something to investigate. And then the other thing is, how people say, measure, what you measure matters, right? And you should measure what matters. There are some tests, that we say are like key, pivotal, super important. Like, let's say fasting insulin, right? That's a very helpful test, which tells you kind of what your baseline insulin levels are after an overnight fast. But if you said to me, well, why would I bother getting my fasting insulin tested? Because if it's 2 or if it's 200, I don't think I'm going to change anything about my life. I'm not going to do anything differently. I'm not going to use it to educate. I'm not going to use it to inform anything. Then I'd be like, well, then I don't know that it's worth getting that tested either. So basically, to me, the tests are useful as a guide. They're not like they're not controlling you, but it's like, well, what does that mean? I want to know more. Maybe I can do that. But you also have to be careful not to like get crazy obsessive about it. So it's a balance to be struck where you have to know yourself. Know, do you have additional goals, and might some numbers help you refine how you're going to work on things?
That is so well explained. That's such a Kim Howerton response. That's an Amy Berger response. And is it true that the two of you get confused with each other?
People mix us up all the time.
That's
It's
really funny.
it's very flattering for me. I think she's gorgeous and brilliant. So,
She is
uh,
very, very
but
smart.
we've joked about it several times. I think it's because we're both fairly sarcastic brunettes. That's all. That's what I got.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No, I love it.
Yeah,
Like her saying, like a keto diet is for you. It should make your life better. It's not to make you
yeah,
miserable. It's to make you happier. So I love that message.
yeah.
Okay, so the normal average person, say they look at you and say, oh, you know what? I got labs. I went to my doctor. I did my annual physical. They gave me some labs, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And everything was just kind of in this range. Tell us the difference between what somebody might think of as the normal like blood labs that they're getting from their doctor in like an annual
Sure,
physical type of a scenario,
sure.
and what you guys are talking about as far as maybe like enhancing that or going above and beyond.
So, do you mean the specific, like the tests, or do you mean the general approach?
Could be either one. Could be the tests
Okay.
themselves. I'm looking at my blood labs and I see there's a glucose
Yeah.
number, there's an LDL
Right.
number, and a total cholesterol number.
Okay.
There may be like a T3 number or something. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
just
Right.
like basic stuff.
Right. Right. So yeah, so the average doctor is going to order kind of a short list of tests, right? Like maybe like a BMP, a basic metabolic panel, maybe a CBC, almost always. Usually a doctor at your annual will order a BMP, a CBC, basic lipids, and a urine analysis. That's usually what people get. And we bump those up. We say, that's not quite enough. And one of the reasons we say that's not quite enough is in the book we talk about this. If you ever, I've gotten a blood test before that the lab messed up and it came back saying I had a disease I don't have, and I was like, that can't be right. Let's retest that. So so we did, and it was like, whoa, no, that was a mix-up. Sorry. And then so you retest when you find out something that's like, really, that seems wrong. But when does the reverse happen? Right? I got a test. It says I'm normal. Okay. Like nobody's like, are we sure that's normal? So the reason you want to get like sort of more comprehensive work is you don't want to just look at one thing from one angle. You kind of want to see it from at least two angles, right? So like if you want to know if your liver's working well and you only got one liver marker, well, who knows? But if you got a couple of liver markers, then you're kind of balancing, and you can see if something seems in alignment. So I'm like, hey, you need a little bit more of a comprehensive list for more of a cross check. And so that's why a few more, and then there are some tests that I think are important that aren't in a doctor's normal repertoire, like the C-peptide, like the fasting insulin. Those will, guide a little bit more about metabolic health issues. Also, like a basic metabolic panel doesn't include ALT and AST, which are, liver related markers that are going to show you if there's any indication of fatty liver, maybe, right? And so there are just tests that you're like, these are not very expensive to add these tests, so let's look at that. And then in terms of evaluating the tests themselves, like I have this all the time with my parents, right? I'll just throw my parents under the bus. Sorry, guys.
Right.
They're like, we got blood labs. And I'm like, great. And my dad like prints me out a list of the ones that came out of range. And I was like, well, where are the other ones? And he's like, well, these are the only ones that were out of range. And I'm like, no. Like, I am not practicing medicine. They are my parents, people. I don't do this with other people. I want to like put a disclaimer out there. I don't evaluate people's blood labs. It is out of my scope of practice, but I can look at my family members' blood labs. And I'll be like, no, you have to look at all of them. Because just because someone said they're in range doesn't mean they're optimal. And so So yeah, you have to look at everything. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's very well explained. So
Yeah.
if somebody's on board and they go to their doctor and they start to request some of these other tests that you're suggesting, this is maybe like a two-part question. First of all, why
Yeah.
in our current system, why is it so difficult to get some of these things done when you're saying they're very inexpensive? People have insurance, supposedly that should help cover some of it. And the second part is this happens so frequently where like it's not as if you go back to like analyze your results. You know, I don't often hear
Right.
that people met
No.
with a doctor or a PA or somebody to go over what the results are, what they mean, how they interact with each other, what's trending high, what's trending low. It's kind of like you said, your labs are done, it's in your email. See you next year.
Everything's fine. See you next year.
Everything's
Yeah.
fine. See you next year. Why
Yeah.
why is that the system? Why is that baked into our system?
I think honestly, I do not blame the doctors. I just can't. The reality is I can't never say never, but I can't say that I've met many doctors who don't care about their patients. In general, doctors become doctors, especially GPs, not like doctors who see patients for years. They really care about their patients. It's that they work in a system, and the medical system is a big business system. I read the other day that there are more, if you take all the people that work under the umbrella of medicine, more people work for insurance companies than are physicians assistants, nurses, like that actually see patients. And it is an industry. And so most doctors are really only able to spend 5, 10, 15 for a first visit with a patient because their schedule is stacked. And that's not their choice. That's what they got to do to keep their practice open. And because of how they get paid. And then the other question, when I said, oh, these tests aren't that expensive, but even $5, the insurance company might not want to spend $5 more on your blood work, right? And so there are limits. And so, I mean, my long and short answer is it's a system, and it's a system that's not really designed to educate a patient. It's a system designed to get the patient in and get the patient out.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to set that expectation for somebody who's listening.
Yeah.
They may be prepared to
Yeah.
go to battle. We also have alternative places. We're lucky most people in the United States have
Yes.
alternative ways they can get blood. That's not true in every country. And isn't it a bit ironic that an insurance company wouldn't pay a $5 blood lab, but they'll charge like $100 for an Advil in a hospital stay or something ridiculous like that? It's insane.
Well,
I
the
hear those stories
hospital
all the
system
time.
is its own engine. It's, there are things going on in the background. But yeah, and the other thing is, unfortunate, you might say, well, isn't it in the insurance company's best interest to have healthy clients so that they won't have to pay as much on your premium? And shouldn't they then pay more for preventative medicine? And the problem with that is that they study these things and they find, well, on average, people only stay with an insurance company for 5 years, right? Maybe you change jobs, maybe you change company, something. And so they're just rolling the dice that you won't get really sick in the next 5 years.
Gotcha.
And that some other insurance company will be on the hook for when all of the house of cards comes tumbling down.
I did not know that. That's very, very interesting. That makes a lot of sense for sure. I did have some questions about some specific kind of areas of blood labs. One of them is maybe the blood glucose, A1C, and fasting insulin, which you've already mentioned several times as something being really, really important. For somebody who thinks they understand, maybe their blood glucose, probably less likely that they're even going to understand what A1C is. They just know that it's in a range that they're not quite diabetic, and come back and see us when you are diabetic. And then the fasting insulin, which hardly anybody gets. Can you explain the relationship between those three things?
Sure. I'm going to use like layman's terms. When you interview Dr. Barry, he can use the science terms. I'm going to keep things simple for people, but so your fasting glucose or your glucose. So the only difference between a fasting glucose test and a glucose test is just, are you fasted or you're not fasted? So at any moment, somebody can stick you with a needle, draw some blood, and test your glucose level. Humans carry glucose in their blood. It's a fast source of energy. However, we can only hold a teeny bit of glucose in our blood or it becomes toxic. And so we are designed to keep our glucose level in a tight range, somewhere usually between 70 and 95, 100 maybe. If you haven't eaten, right after a meal, it'll go up slightly while you're metabolizing that. And then it should come back down. And so glucose numbers are a snapshot. They're a moment in time. What was your glucose right then? HbA1c or hemoglobin A1c is a test that is done on a certain type of red blood cell, right? That is going to tell you, so I don't want to say this. So these blood cells, they are in your body and they pick up glycation. So I think of it like lint from the dryer, right? It's like you got a dryer ball in there. It's going around. These red blood cells are just in your blood. And as they go around, they pick up excess glucose that's in your body. And so they get a little lint stuck to them that is glucose or glycation. And that glycation collects over time. So, this specific type of red blood cell lives on average about 90 days. It actually lives a little less in women, a little longer in men. There's some person-to-person variability, which most people don't think about. But that means you can then extract this cell, test it, and see how glycated it has become. And that's your A1C. And so it's a percentage. What is the percentage of glycation on this molecule? And the higher the glycation, the more they would estimate you have glucose in your body. And so another name for A1C is actually EAG, estimated average glucose. So they use the HbA1c reading, which often will just be called A1C, to estimate what has this person's glucose been over the last 3 months. And so it's not a snapshot reading. It's going to give you more of an average. A couple of problems with an A1C, though, is, as I mentioned, different people have different living lifespans, I should say, on these particular types of cells, which means like there's a condition called thalassemia. And that means, and it's not just, I'll just say it's not just how long they live, it's their size as well. Some are small, some are big. And so there are certain conditions like thalassemia, which makes them smaller. And so they become more glycated because they have less surface area. And so we have some variation. And so you might go in and get your A1C tested and they'd be like, holy moly, it's 6.5, your blood sugar is not in a healthy range. Hopefully they say holy moly. But then you're like, wow, but my fasting glucose is never over 95. What's going on there? And so you might be one of those people with longer living or differently sized red blood cells.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So blood glucose can vary depending on lots of things, what you ate, what you didn't eat, what time of day, all the things can vary. A1C, right. A step better. I think this is like a BMI or something. Like if you tell me a population has a BMI of 45, I can safely assume that probably not all of them are massive bodybuilders. I'll right. just probably think to myself, like, yeah, that's probably not a great number. There's going to be individual variation. Like we see it in all the time in carnivore where somebody has an A1C that's 5.1 and they keep going and it's 5.2 and then it goes to 5.3 and just has that slow creep and people are freaking out. Like, well, what about my A1C? Well, maybe your red blood cells are living longer. There's so many different questions we still don't really know.
We don't know the answer to, yeah.
We don't know the answer to. So the best step, the gold standard, in my opinion, is the one that you mentioned all the time. The fasting insulin would be an objective number to tell you where your insulin is, because the insulin is always going to precede the blood sugar. And a lot of people don't understand that. We diagnose type 2 diabetes when the blood sugar and the A1C is getting really high, but we bypass the 10 years, 20 years, 30 years that fasting insulin could have been elevated and you're heading in that direction, but you've got no visibility towards it because nobody measures it.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. Chronic high glucose is going to lead to hyperinsulinemia. Or actually, it can precede it. So hyperinsulinemia is just too high in insulin for too long. And so insulin is a responsive hormone. It's trying to help your body manage the glucose levels that it is experiencing. And when you have that chronic high insulin, yeah, exactly like you said, it will tell you have a problem. It's sort of like tracking the weather instead of tracking like how much water there is in your house, right? Like when, it's like, wow, there's a problem, but we probably should have known about it before now.
Yeah. Okay. That is very well explained. I consider you to be an expert in women's hormones and thyroid. Again, not a medical professional, but it's something that you've written about a lot, something you've dealt with a lot. Tell us some of the things that you've learned about women's hormones, and especially like as it relates to the thyroid. I think a lot of people kind of have picked up on the fact that the blood work that they get, if they get any, about their thyroid is woefully lacking major components that they get, and they make assumptions. It's maddening.
Yeah. So most doctors I'll say most, will only order a TSH, which stands for thyroid stimulating hormone, which actually isn't even a thyroid marker. It's a thyroid sensing marker, right? So or a stimulating marker, I should say. So essentially, TSH is the body's bullhorn, which yells at the thyroid to say, if it's low, it's saying produce more. And so, sorry, my brain just went totally off the rails right there. So if you have, let me say that again. If it's low, it's actually saying, don't send more. If it's high, see, I did it too. If it's high, it's yelling through the loudspeaker, send more. So when you have a high TSH, it doesn't mean you have high thyroid numbers. It means it's screaming for thyroid hormone. And so what you need to then know is, well, what are my actual thyroid numbers, right? You want to know what your free T4 is. You want to know what your free T3 is. You also want to know if you have antibodies, because the number one cause of hypothyroidism is Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune condition. And so you need to know if you're producing antibodies for that problem. And so TSH is helpful. I think you should run a TSH in your annual labs, but it only opens the door. It does not give you accurate information, because the other thing people don't know is, for women at least, different time of the month, TSH might go up. Did you just work out? TSH might be up. Have you not eaten recently? So all of these things can affect your TSH. It is a very changeable number from one day to the next, from 1 minute to the next. It might be drastically different, or rather I should say dramatically different. That's the wrong use of drastically. So it's not enough, but it might say, wow, that TSH is really out of alignment. Let's do some follow-up. Let's actually look at some thyroid labs.
Got it. Okay. And then in the book, do you give like practical things that people can do if those values are too high or too low? Or is it basically they need to work with a practitioner and get on some type of hormones or some type of medication?
Right. We tell them what are the accurate. So there are hundreds of thyroid tests you could run, but only some of them are useful. So we tell you the useful ones, you should run these. And then you do need to work with a doctor, because whether you can, in almost every state, you can order these tests yourself, but you cannot order your own medication. And so most people will, if you have these out of whack, will need to use some type of thyroid medication, and that is by prescription. And so you will need to work with somebody for that.
Got it. Do you make recommendations on who people can be working with as well?
I don't, because it varies from state to state, but there are some great online practitioners coming up. There are, like, I'm learning more about different online sources, like, for instance, for menopausal issues, and I think they might do thyroid support as well. So that is something I need to double check. There's a company out there called MIDI, MIDI. And so a lot of women come to talk to me on my channel and say, I want to take hormones for menopause, but my doctor either won't talk about it, doesn't support it. And so MIDI is an online company, and they work with insurance. They're not a clinic. They're like a real doctor place. And they can prescribe things. And so I think they might do thyroid as well. I'd have to double check that.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. I wanted to know also, in the book, is it primarily looking at blood work, or are there other markers and other tests and other things that people can do unrelated, maybe less invasive? What are some of your favorite things that people can do? Maybe even things that people can do, that are a little bit invasive, but they can do at home, such as like testing ketones, testing blood glucose at home, continuous glucose monitors. What are some of your favorites as far as that goes?
We do have a section on how to use a continuous glucose monitor. We have a section on, how can you monitor your blood sugar to make sure it's staying in an optimal range. We do talk a little bit about body composition in the book, specifically around aging well, and having the right kind of body composition in terms of maintaining an appropriate amount of muscle mass and strength as you age. One of the things we go into in this book, so it's kind of divided up into a couple of sections. And the first section is like, annual labs. Then there's a whole section on managing common health conditions like hypothyroidism, menopause issues, other hormonal, adrenal, all these other things that commonly break down. Then the last section is on like things people die from and how you might monitor those kinds of things. And one of those is actually keeping a good body composition is very helpful, specifically against falls, right? One of the main causes of death of older adults is falling. And especially though, like just falling isn't it. It's falling when frail. And so we talk about muscle mass. We do talk about like some strength testing, like that does seem indicative, like grip strength and leg strength of longer life. So we do talk about a few non-blood work things in the book. It's mostly blood work. But it includes some other things.
Okay. Yeah, that's really helpful. Is there a particular way of measuring body composition that you like? And if so, is there also like a frequency you like? Would you rather have somebody do a DEXA annually versus doing bioelectrical impedance weekly, for example?
Right. I would say that most bioimpedance is, to put it politely, not super useful. There may be new technology that comes out, but the average scale that people have in their house that says it's a bioimpedance scale, not very accurate. And so like I am a much fluffier human than my boyfriend. And yet on our home scale, it says he has more body fat than I do, when I probably have 3 times as much body fat as he does. So like that seems wrong, right? And so the home scale, not super helpful, and not worth spending a lot of money on, in my opinion. So the bod pod is fairly accurate. DEXA is kind of the gold standard. Now, in part, it's the gold standard because that's just what everyone decided to test with, but it's pretty accurate. So I would say DEXA. And part of the reason I like a DEXA better than all the others is it gives you an estimated visceral fat, but it also gives you an estimated bone density. And bone density, especially in women, I'll say postmenopausally, but also for men, osteoporosis is no bueno. You don't want that. And you need to do a lot of self-protection to know what your bone density looks like. So DEXA kind of gives you a lot of good info. And so because of that, I don't care. I am not qualifying people for bodybuilding compositions. I don't care if it says you're 10%, but you're 11%. I don't care, right? But I would like to know if you're 20% or 40%, right? Like broad strokes are fine.
Yeah, got it. Okay. We use a portable InBody is the brand name, and it's a portable
Uh-huh.
scale, but you still have to hold on to something and
Yeah.
stand on something. And I will
Yeah.
say it's reasonable for bioelectrical impedance. I think it does an okay job showing you that directionality. I don't think it's the most accurate. I agree with you. I think DEXA is fine. But of course, I mean, the scale that we have was like $350 or something. So they're very
Right.
expensive.
And you, instead of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands for your
Right,
DEXA scanner. So
right,
I
exactly.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, but honestly, I think even the US Navy body fat calculator method, which is you get a neck measurement, a waist measurement, and a hip measurement, and you put those things together and you look them up, that's actually been found to be fairly accurate,
There you go.
unless you have a giant neck. That throws things off.
Got it. So Formula One drivers, you're out, but everybody else that
It's
will work
actually
just fine.
funny. I heard a story from somebody who'd been in the military, and they had said that they knew to, like, make their neck bigger
Nice.
because it makes their body fat look lower.
That's
Anyway,
great. I love that. Okay, awesome. The final chapter, again, I've perused the
yeah.
book. I'm really excited to like deep dive into this. Something I know obviously you're an expert in, but using labs to help kind of determine directions in your lifestyle. I would think primarily diet, but there's also other lifestyle factors that people can modify. How can people use the numbers that they're getting in these labs, especially when they start to get them consistently? They're noticing patterns and trends. Tell us about that chapter in particular and the things you wrote about there.
Yeah, chapter 5 is using your labs to dial in your diet. And so it's all about, like, what if my B12 is low? What if my B12 is high? What if my insulin is low? What does it tell me, right? And some of them are kind of direct, right? If you have low vitamin D3, you probably need more vitamin D3. But what are some good ways to do that? And what are the things I don't think about? Like, and if you have low iron, what does that mean? And how do I address that? And, like, we'll tell you in here that maybe you should look at your copper levels if your iron levels are off, not because it directly impacts it, but it secondarily does. And so, really being able to look at, okay, if a marker is not optimal, what lifestyle things could I adjust? Because not everything is fixable by lifestyle. But if you haven't tried lifestyle, you haven't tried anything, right? Because if you go directly to a medical intervention, which I am in full support of medical intervention, I am thumbs up on medical intervention. But if you go directly to medical intervention without addressing lifestyle, you're just putting band-aids on it. It's not going to fix it necessarily. But if you try lifestyle and you're like, I've done all that. I've done this. Yes. I know I did it. Then you're like, all right, now it's time to dig deeper. And so that chapter really is about, let's make sure we've covered the lifestyle bases, before we start on a course of action that probably isn't going to fix it either.
Yeah, that's so well said. I wish more people knew that. That there are things you can try. Will it solve it? Maybe, maybe not. But at least you could try the free things and the simple things and the habit-based things and make a big dent and possibly not need procedures, more medications, all these other things that they're pushing you towards. That sounds very, very practical. And it's important to note, I just want to bring this up so people aren't confused.
Sure.
You did write a book that came out in 2024 with Dr. Berry. That's all about blood labs as well. If you're watching and not listening, she's holding up the book now. You can see they're visually very different. The first book is a little bit thinner. The second book is a lot thicker for sure. So can you explain why you decided to write the second book? What things are in the second book are not in the first book? And how can people make sure that they're getting the right book?
Got it. All right. So I will say, from a visual perspective, the first book is blue. The second book is red. So if you're looking at, there's a blue element, but Common Sense Labs is written in red and black on the new version, and it's written in blue and white on the first. So that'll tell you. Also, the new version says expanded and updated. And honestly, the first version is no longer for sale anywhere unless somebody is selling a copy they already own. Like, that could happen somewhere. But the reason, we wrote the first book, it's really more of a booklet. We wrote the first book because Dr. Berry was getting a lot of questions about blood labs, and we're like, let's just answer these basic questions. And that went really well, but people kept coming back to us with deeper questions. And once we knew people had these deeper questions about, like, not just, well, what is this marker telling me, but what does it actually mean? Like, what is the deeper thing? We said, okay, this is going to take more words. And so we went back and we rewrote, we rewrote most of it. So there are some charts that remain. Everything that's mentioned in the old book is mentioned somewhere in the new book. So we didn't throw anything out, but we said, hey, we need to go a lot deeper on this. And so the reason we wrote it again was we thought we could do a better job. I will say, I think this short book is a really great, like, I don't want too much info book, right? And if you're that person that's like, I don't really want to know too much, you can like cherry pick your way through the new book. Just read the chapter on annual labs. If you don't need to know, like, if you're not a questioning soul, just read the annual labs chapter and you'll be fine. But the old book was meant to fill a certain need, and we just realized there was more of a need than we had known.
Okay. Well, I'm so glad you did that. And I do have a question I should have asked you a minute ago when we were talking about chapter 5. Can you give us some examples of how somebody could dial in their diet one way or another based on what their labs are telling them? Like, for example, is it as drastic as saying, oh, wow, Casey, you're carnivore, you should have been a vegan? Or is it more like, hey, one person is maybe eating a little bit more saturated fat and they could benefit from eating more monounsaturated fat, like a much more like subtle difference? Like, how do you help people dial in their diet, or maybe determine, like, vegetables are fine for one person and maybe not the best for another person? Like, give me some examples of what tweaks you can make in diet itself.
Got it. I will probably say that I don't think we have ever recommended somebody become a vegan, but I like never say never. I don't know.
There you go.
But no, it's not that prescriptive. Quite honestly, the companies that tell you that if you send them your stool sample and they can tell you exactly what diet you should eat are full of what you're sending them. Because though that may exist, that diagnostic may exist at some point, that's not what it's telling them. And it's not what it's telling. So it's not, nobody can decide for you what the best diet is. They can give you some indicators. Like, as an example, vitamin C is in this chapter. So we tell you, hey, if your vitamin C is low, it might be that you're not getting enough vitamin C. That's one thing. But two, it might be that you're blocking vitamin C with too much glucose, because they can be competitive with each other. But then when you look at uric acid, you might look at uric acid and your uric acid is high and your vitamin C is low. And looking at those two markers together will tell you that sometimes uric acid goes high when you have a vitamin C deficiency. So you can say, oh, okay, well, a pretty easy test is, let me increase the vitamin C in my diet, even in a low carb way. I just say bell peppers, my favorite vegetable, well, fruit technically, full of vitamin C. Anyway, you don't have to drink orange juice, I swear. And you're potentially, then your uric acid comes down. Hey, now you've said, oh, look, my mostly meat diet is really fine. I found some vegetables that I tolerate that raise my vitamin C level, and my uric acid came down. And that might be a good thing for me, right? So just things that people might not always know about options they have to manage their diet. Or like, my insulin is still high, even though I eat a low carb diet. What might that be telling me? Or I have chronically high HSCRP. What might that be telling me about my diet? Or my homocysteine is high. What should I do there, right? So there are just various things when markers come in on your blood work. Then what might you try to address that issue, or high or low, what might you do to try and address that with lifestyle intervention to see if that pushes the needle in one direction or another?
Got it. That's perfect. You guys have done just such great work with all your previous books. I've read both of you guys, and I know, I'm really looking forward to finishing this one as well. People are going to really appreciate it. It's such a confusing and difficult spot to be in where, we're all choosing to eat differently for various different reasons, and normal contexts and general populations really don't apply to us as much. And so to put this information out in such a comprehensive book in a way that's also very easy to understand, and is written in just the style of Kim and Dr. Barry, is just absolutely perfect. So very much looking forward to this book coming out. It's such a joy to chat with you. I'm so grateful to consider you a friend and somebody I bumped into at several conferences and got to hang out with in person. So thank you so very much for all of your hard work, and thank you for taking time to be on our show today. Where can people go to find you and connect with you in your work, and where can people go to find the book?
Okay. So the book is available right now on Amazon, and it will be available in other stores. It launches August 26th. So you should be able to find it in most bookstores at that point. But if you go to commonsenselabsbook.com, you have to add the word book. commonsenselabsbook.com. We will have a link to places you can buy it there. Currently, it goes to the pre-sale on Amazon. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, perfect. And we'll link it in the show notes as well, so anybody listening can just go directly down and make sure they get the right link.
Sounds good.
And then any personal places you want people to go to find you, any social media links?
You can find me at kimhowerton.com. Just my name, kimhowerton.com. And what I do in the world is I mostly right now write books and write recipes and write various things, but I also run a program specifically for people who find weight loss especially challenging.
Awesome. That's it. That's all you're doing in the world. Is just fixing the world and solving the problems and just the things. Yeah, no big deal. Kim, you're such a joy. Thank you so very much again for taking time out of your busy life to tell us about the book. Like we said, we'll link it in the show notes so people can find it. But for now, thank you so very much. We really, really appreciate you. Thanks for being on our show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.